So here we are getting ready to create a medicine wheel herb garden. And I wanted to start with the beginning with you guys to show you. So right there is going to be the site for our medicine wheel garden. That is a circular planter. If you see a fluffy butt right here, this is my Anatolian Shepherd. She decided that she wants to be right here in the video. So what I did over spring, there was wild grasses galore here. I used an organic herbal combination of cinnamon and thyme oil. You can spray that and that will essentially just prevent the plants from procreating. So we have dry grass area over there. What I'm going to do next is I'll show you before and after picture, do a little bit of clearing and weed whacking and prepare the space so that we can identify the 4 directions and ultimately get to setting the stones and get to planting our plants. So I'm going to go to the before picture next so that you can actually see where we started. And then I'll continue once I'm done with the after picture. All right, so the after picture is an after video, a little bit of weed whacking and shoveling of some dirt, and we've got a nice clear, clean space full of lovely soil. And I love this tree that's immediately oriented to the south of this magical circle. So what I'm going to do next is point out the 4 directions, establish the 4 directions. Essentially, well, it's going to be pretty easy. Right here, the sunrise is here. That south, west, north is right underneath my finger here. So I'm going to mark this out on this circle and begin the process of creating a medicine wheel. It's worth noting that this is going to be a combination of some Native American practices, some information that I've learned from Celtic and Wiccan practices. So it's going to be an organic calling in of the 4 directions and establishing the energetics of sacred space to support a medicinal herb garden growing here. All right, more soon. All right, so here we are at the next phase of this creation of a medicinal wheel herb garden. So it's worth noting, I mentioned this is going to draw from several traditions. This is not straight up Native American medicinal wheel garden. I'll show you a couple reasons why. What I really want to suggest is that we live in times that it's important for us to honor. There's tons of Native American energy up here. And it's important for us to honor the place where we're at and also our own history. So when you look at this wheel, you'll see it's pretty easy to see there's these 3 cut stones. There's another stone directly behind the piece of wood that's at the center. And these are slabs of petrified wood that I found and cut myself. And I love them because you can see with their stripes, they're actually, to me, calling in the energy of the 4 directions. And in the center, I placed a cut piece of pine that I was going to say for firewood, but it felt really important to make that a center pulling space for either calling in energy or an altar for offerings for the directions and the ancestors. So one of the ways this is going to be similar but different to a Native American wheel is traditionally the Native American medicine wheels. There's stones placed around the edges of the circle that are calling in each of the 13 moons. They also put lines of stones, focusing a finger right to the center, out to the side. So there'd be a line of stones creating 4 quadrants. We're going to use these actual striped stones to create the energetic lines, but I am going to be suggesting that, if we consider that this area over here is the direction of the east, well, we're going to be, planting plants in that line, but we're also going to be planting a little bit of plants over on this side and a little bit of plants over on that side, creating something that's going to be more of a unified circle. And I'll put a picture eventually of how that's going to look, but it's going to be a flow of energy as the sun flows through the sky from day to night, and as the seasons flow across our planet, these plants are going to be able to pick up and slowly transition, and some of them are going to vibrate so very much pure the direction of one particular direction. Some of them are going to start to merge and meld and share the direction of, say, east and south, or south and west. So I'll give us a little bit more of a schematic next, but I wanted to show you how we're coming along. Okay, so here we have what I've written up as a potential plan for a personally crafted, uniquely your garden encompassing 4 directions herb garden. So I've drawn this up much like the garden that I was just sharing with you guys, where the north is closest to us, the east is to the left, south is further away, that's where the oak tree was, and west is to the right. Now, in traditional Native American gardens, I mentioned that along those major lines that cross through the middle, they place stones to either carve out a pathway, but really to continue to call in the directions. They also place stones all around the outsides of the circle to account for all of the moons in a yearly cycle. I'm simply going to, because our space is not quite large enough to make a pathway to walk through, I'm going to call in those. I mentioned that I put the petrified stones down to mark and call in each direction, but you'll see also I've got these lighter cross-sectional lines. And what I want to invite you to consider is that these lines might be better used for our purposes or more general purposes to invoke the directions. And so you can see that, over here, east is being invoked by this whole part. South is both of these parts. West here, north here. So we have quadrants, but we also have a more organic and movable, malleable, energetic space. And one thing you'll find when you start to do these is the plants often craft their own medicine. There's another practice that I haven't mentioned yet where people don't even plant the herbs. They just make the circle and they allow the herbs to find the circle. So that is one thing that you could also consider. What I want to get to next is the different traditions in terms of addressing the 4 directions. I've got 2 different offerings here. And the first I want to mention is there's a couple different Native American ways to address the directions. Or there's a couple different color codes, but the east is typically yellow, the south is blue, the west is red, north is white. That's the first line that I've put on addressing the directions. And the traditional plants that are planted there are the smudging herbs are first. So to address the direction east, you would plant tobacco. You would then plant any other yellow colored flowers. To address the direction south, you'd plant sage. You'd then plant any blue colored flowers. To address the direction west, sweetgrass is the smudging herb. You'd plant any red colored flowers. And to address the direction of the north, you'd plant cedar as the smudging plant and any white colored flowers. Now, when I have been trained in Wiccan and Celtic traditions, my understanding of the directions and the colors is slightly different than the Native American. So I want to offer both, and as with everything, take what feels good for you, but I've asterisked below the top line every direction that I am honestly more familiar with. So that's probably what I'm going to go with, is a cross-section of, I'm going to plant the sacred smudging herb in each direction, and then I'm going to go with the color, which is what I am most familiar with, since this is my energy that's invoking this. So I understand the east as yellow, and the element is air. So you would plant any yellow flowers, which includes the yellow in the Native American, the black-eyed Susan, the milkweed. You could also plant goldenrod, sunflower, arrowleaf, balsam root. You might also plant any plants that invoke the direction of air. Moving to the south, I understand the south is the element fire. The color is red, so there would be any of the Native American red plants, bee balm, blazing star. You might also try cardinal flower or red geranium. Moving to the west, I understand that color to be blue, so I would plant sweetgrass. Excuse me, I forgot to mention in the south I would plant sage. I would plant sweetgrass in the west to honor the traditional Native American ways of invoking the medicine wheel, but then because I'm more comfortable understanding blue as the west, I would plant the blue plants from the native tradition, vervain and bergamot, but also love and mist, bachelor button, even rosemary. And then finally, So we're doing this in a clockwise direction, those of us in the northern hemisphere, and you're going to plant in the same way that you would cast a circle. You're going to start with the east, and I'm doing it. I'm moving to the south, the west, and the final direction is the north. The smudging element is cedar. I understand that color to be green and sort of a burnt umber, a brownish gold. So here you could consider aloe, lemon balm. You might even consider some sort of a motherwort or any other, maybe even just a traditionally totally non-flowering green plant. And so as with everything, as I mentioned, take what feels good for you. These are just offerings, and in the center I've already mentioned that I do have that altar, which is within the tradition of Native American and Celtic medicine wheel creation. Here we have it, the final version of the medicine wheel herbal garden. The seeds have all been scattered. I am going to wait until cooler temperatures this evening to give this beauty her first watering. A couple things I wanted to point out to you that I did. So in the middle of the altar, I had a previous medicine garden where I made this plate that pointed out the 4 directions. You might recognize it. It looks pretty much like the diagram that I had in the video where you can see north, south, east, and west, but you can see the other quadrants that I actually decided not to put stones in, but you can see that for myself, I penciled them into the medicine wheel, and then I scattered in the east quadrant first, in the south quadrant next, west, and then moving closest to us right here. So this would be the north. This whole space from here all the way to here. So that's due north, right under my finger, and then to either side would be the northern plants. So when I went in a clockwise circle, because that is of the ilk of the northern hemisphere. So this is going to be it for our solstice gathering on June 20th, 2021. But I cannot wait to share some time-lapse images as these seeds begin to grow in sync with the energies of the 4 directions. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in the next module.